Alright, so you got Master of Darkness here. I mean, his face is not even recognizable. The clouds just look like random lines. Buildings look like a grid. It doesn't look like a building. The bricks. I mean, this just doesn't look right at all. And then D-Dither shader and B-Spline. Yeah, looks way better. I mean, even just B-Spline by itself, huge improvement. Looks more like cartoon art now. Yeah, I mean, and everyone's played Donkey Kong Country. This is a perfect example. I mean, just look at that shit. I think it's pretty obvious which one it's intended to look like. That doesn't even matter. Which one looks better is what matters. And it's not even close. I mean, come on. There's just no way that anyone can tell me this looks better than this. Then when we get in game, nah, dude. Yeah, soft, nice tree leaves. Just looks like a cartoon. Disgusting edges. And it's not just console games, it's anything pixel art. I mean, look at this. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror here on the Game Boy Advance. This is not meant to be played on a CRT. Just at native resolution on a little LCD screen far away, right? Definitely doesn't look as bad with integer scaling as the games that are made to be played on a CRT. But it's the same story, really. I mean, just look at Kirby himself. Look at his eyes. Nice shaded eyes. Just blocks. Everything looks smoother too. That's something that took me a second to realize. It's improving the motion because you're not blowing up the edges. If you blow up those edges, they'll look more more stuttery, more blurry in motion than they're supposed to with a given MPRT. So you're exaggerating the edge. Yeah, you can see some animations. There's a dither pattern. A lot of people wouldn't think that the GBA uses dithering because it didn't have composite video, but there it is. Totally does. You can see it in the background as well. And it is just exposed like crazy with integer scaling, but with B-Spline, you don't even really need a D-Dither shader. Like maybe here on this chest. Hey, up to you. Some games definitely look a lot better with the D-Dither shader on the Game Boy Advance. What about 3D games, though? Here you have Kirby and the Crystal Shards for the N64. Now, obviously, everything that's aligned to the pixel grid benefits hugely. And it does smooth out the edges on all the 3D stuff as well. But there's something else that does that a lot better. And that would be just increasing the render resolution. It's like, yeah, it is smoothing it out. And it's smoothing out the menu, which, you know, if there's a game that has a lot of 2D stuff and just a little bit of 3D, or mostly 3D but quite a bit of 2D, very arguable to use this. I mean, yeah, if you're stuck at native resolution, you can't bump the 3D rendering resolution, you absolutely want to use this. But it's not as dramatic as with the 2D games. When things move, you still have aliasing all over the place. 2D games doesn't happen, and it's because the things aren't aligned to a pixel grid, so you're having kind of interactions across pixels that don't happen on a 2D grid. So yeah, let me show you with here. I had to get a custom scaling going because the N64 core is just totally broken with the scaling. So yeah, let me turn integer scale back on. We'll start off downsampling. It's still going to downsample to 640 by 480 because the core is coded just completely incorrectly, but I will show you what that looks like. Check if I'm still recording. Okay. Yeah. So now you can see that the edges are a lot smoother than they were before because we're using downsampling, basically SSAA. And also if we turn on in the core options the bilinear and the AA from the N64, looks a lot better. And then of course with a lot of these 3D cores you just gotta do this. You gotta turn on the bilinear. For some reason it works differently than the shaders. Yeah, it's a lot smoother, right? But it's only applying at a 2x prescale. The N64 is actually a 240p console, but this emulator is coded, like hard coded to 480p with the parallel renderer. So you're not getting those super smooth edges like you're supposed to. It's also always underscanned. There's like the black borders are not removed at all, and there's no way to correctly remove them. So yeah, even with the bilinear filtering, there's like, I swear the scaling is still wrong. Takes a while for that to pop back up. Okay. So yeah, that looks a lot better than it did before. And even with the shaders off, it looks a lot better than it did. So yeah, it does help a lot to super sample, and way more than... Honestly, the super sampling is more important than this, I think. But problem is, you can get even better. Turn off the shaders. Yeah. See, when you're downsampling, you're throwing away a ton of detail. What doesn't get improved is the 2D stuff. Everything that's kind of aligned to that pixel grid, like the menu here, that's gonna look the same integer scaled as it is with downsampling on without a shader, as it is with downsampling off and the higher rendering resolution. You can't, you can't just increase the 3D rendering resolution and then get a higher resolution on your 2D. So that's what's going on there. But the 3D is just massively improved. Texture resolution isn't improving either, but textures are not aligned to the pixel grid either. So if we downsample, I mean, we can just leave the shader on so you can see what I'm talking about. So downsampled with B-Spline on. That's what it looks like. So yeah, it is sort of smoothing out the textures, but it's nothing like with a 2D game. Absolutely nothing like it. It's mostly on that map, or on the... It's not really a skybox, but kind of looks like one way back there. That, I think that is aligned to the pixel grid, actually. No. Yeah, we're having a perspective shift back and forth. Not sure. But all this stuff in between the background and us, that's shifting perspective all the time. So whenever that happens, you're going to have interactions across pixels, again, that you just wouldn't have in 2D. It's going to interrupt the smoothing from really affecting it that much. You'd need to smooth across way more pixels using pretty much like a spatial blur filter. That's what like FXAA is. But here it wouldn't be to anti-alias, it would just be to block out detail from shitty looking upscaled textures. Which you could just do with the texture filtering, you know? Like that's what you would want to do. Not filter across the entire camera, but just filter the textures if you want them blurrier. Yeah, hopefully that makes sense. This applies to every 3D game out there. Just applying spatial blur, pretty much only recommend that if it's for anti-aliasing. Alright, if you're going to scale, or if you're trying to smooth textures, you definitely want to use texture filtering to do that. Unfortunately, we don't really have any options as far as that goes in this emulator. There's a lot of issues with this emulator. and with early 3D console emulators in general. Yeah, that pretty much sums that up. I'm gonna go over Swan Station as well. Alright, so same situation in Symphony of the Night. Except this is mostly a 2D game, so really definitely want to use downsampling in this example. If we don't, all of this is going to look like this. Tons of blocking. It's all over the place. Very hard to see with the B-Spline on. Yeah, it's just totally, you can totally see the compression and the aliasing, but with B-Spline on, it's mostly masked. Yeah, it's got an unnatural brown outline on his head. It's much more subtle with B-Spline on. Just all the small details. More cohesive with the shader on. It just makes more sense. But again, that 3D back there is going to look a lot better if we just don't downsample. So into the core options. And in this, it's actually very interesting. There is an option in here. Right, you got off, which ruins our 2D because it's not downsampled, but then it makes the 3D look much better. Right, that's just way better than it was before. Don't know why it's stretched though, this is weird. Then, yeah, and then box, that would be just downsample everything, right? 3D looks worse, 2D looks better with the shader on. But then, you got this option. This uses bilinear filtering on the 2D, and then leaves the 3D alone. It kind of has to detect it. Does a fairly good job. So, yeah, that's pretty cool, right? Wish that was in every emulator, because it really does look a lot better. 3D and the 2D have much better quality, but I also wish that B-Spline was default, or at least Hermite, instead of bilinear filtering. Bilinear filtering is just not as good. It's fine, it's still better than integer scaling, but it's not as good as B-Spline. Alright, yeah.